Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me in this conversation today about what happens after the first 30 days of going gluten-free. Now, just so everybody knows, I went gluten-free over a decade ago. I was having some severe health issues, and I found a doctor that decided to start testing me for allergens in the food I was eating. While other doctors told me that maybe it was anxiety or perhaps, stress was causing my issues, this particular doctor took me seriously and realized that the potential I had for food allergies was greater than, stress management. Now, having said that, I'm not a professional in the medical field. I want everybody to know, if you are suffering with any kind of ailment, please seek medical advice. Do not use this video for medical advice. I want to start off by saying, if somebody you knew stopped smoking, wouldn't you congratulate that person and say, job well done? Congratulations, I know it's not easy. It can be very hard for some people to quit smoking, but it's the best choice you ever made. It's very good for your health. And support that person in their non-smoking journey. I found the opposite to be true when I started a gluten-free lifestyle. And now, mind you, this was over a decade ago. There was still a lot of stigmatization around it. Not so much as much anymore, but it still lingers. Close friends, relatives, coworkers, anybody I knew that heard about me going gluten-free thought it was absolutely ridiculous. So my first 30 days trying out this gluten-free lifestyle, I had no support. I had no one telling me, you know what, I'm going to do that with you. I'm going to work with you so that we can both have gluten-free options. I had nothing like that. So to the parents out there, the caretakers or friends or family that are supporting someone newly diagnosed with a health issue that's trying out a gluten-free lifestyle, thank you for your support. It's much easier when people around us support us in our health journeys. There are a few pros of going gluten-free. And in the first 30 days when I went gluten-free, immediately I got relief from migraines. That's not to say I don't have migraines or that it was a cure for migraines, but I got relief from them. Prior to going gluten-free, I had been hospitalized many times. The last hospitalization was catastrophic to my health, where I was paralyzed for 8 days with a migraine. The next health issue that it helped was my asthma. It didn't cure my asthma. But then and now, I only need a rescue inhaler. I don't need regular asthma meds to cope with my days. Now, somebody that has COPD or emphysema may not find this to be true, even going with a gluten-free lifestyle. I didn't have very severe asthma like many people do. I had what they called seasonal asthma. So that's when I had trouble and I needed an inhaler. Ever since, especially the first 30 days, I have not needed a regular inhaler for asthma. I've only ever needed a rescue inhaler. So I think that speaks volumes to a gluten-free lifestyle, even if you don't have an allergy or an intolerance, or if you're not celiac. If you try this lifestyle, I think you'll see that it does help improve a lot of ailments. Again, seek medical advice when starting a new diet regimen. 3 other things I noticed right away when starting a gluten-free lifestyle. I had better performance at the gym. Prior to this, I was struggling to even walk around the block. We have a beautiful park nearby. I couldn't even walk a simple quarter of a mile. Our park has a measured mile. Yet when I got to the end of the corner, which measured a quarter of a mile, I was out of breath, my legs hurt, and I could not make it past then. I had to get back in my car and drive home, and I felt defeated. Better performance at the gym for me looked like endurance, stamina, and strength. It took a while to get where I'm at today, where I'm able to work out normally and have a really decent hour-long workout at the gym. In fact, it took years. But going gluten-free definitely facilitated the process and made it easier for me. What I also noticed about going gluten-free is that I enjoy a simpler lifestyle. From moment one, when my doctor suggested it, I noticed that my ingredient list at the grocery store went way down. The food in my pantry didn't take up so much space. And the meal preparation became easier for me. Now, what do I mean by all those things? When you live eating gluten, you might enjoy breadcrumbs, you might enjoy mac and cheese, pasta, bread, things of that nature. Desserts are a big one. I could no longer have any of those things with flour or wheat. So I took them completely out of my pantry altogether, donated all the food that I could no longer have, and I started from scratch. Instead of rolling chicken in breadcrumbs, I started sauteing chicken in olive oil. That eliminated the egg and the breadcrumb mixture. Therefore, I just needed 2 ingredients, some chicken and some olive oil. That's just one example of how my pantry lessened over time, the meals got easier to prepare, and I started enjoying a simpler lifestyle in that way because I no longer had a 100-item list to go to the grocery store with. Now, I just need, what am I cooking for dinner? Chicken. Okay. Olive oil, check. Chicken, check. That's it. Of course, I always include a veggie, salad, what have you. But I also don't use croutons. So there's just another example of foods I eliminated that take up way less space in my pantry, that have way less carbs in them, and eventually, it did take more than 30 days, but I did lose massive amounts of weight from this lifestyle. Now, I do want to get into some myths. People think if you start a gluten-free lifestyle that you're going to automatically lose weight because you're no longer eating cake, cookies, pie, bread, anything made with flour or wheat. The truth of the matter is it's not the case. The first 30 days eating gluten-free, I think I gained 10 pounds. Now, how can that be? Because I was a sugarholic. Give up cake? Seriously? Cookies? Oh my goodness. I had to give up everything I loved. And I rebelled a little. What do you mean I have to give all this up? I've always eaten it my whole life. What do you mean I have to give it up? I don't want to give up all this delicious stuff. Cherry pie? What? Yeah. So I allowed myself to dip into the chip bag a little bit more. I allowed myself to get out those tortillas and some salsa, if you know what I mean. And I had mini pity parties over it until I realized I was doing just as much damage to my health substituting more junk food for junk food. Another myth that I've heard people say, gluten-free has no taste. That is simply not true. It was not true back then, over a decade ago when I started it, and it's not true now, especially now. Grocery stores are packed with aisle after aisle of gluten-free food. Tasty gluten-free food. Instead of rolling my chicken in breadcrumbs or wheat flour, I now sometimes roll chicken in almond flour. If I want a baked chicken breast or a piece of fried chicken leg, something like that. Does it taste like my grandmother's country cooking? No, it doesn't. But it's still delicious. I made up my own way of seasoning my chicken so that I can satisfy that craving, that I used to have when I started out gluten-free and craved and craved and craved everything I could no longer eat. Rolling the chicken in the almond flour, I believe there's about, say, 3 carbs. However, I did come across some gluten-free breadcrumbs that I tried at one point, and I noticed they were 25 carbs. So even if something is gluten-free, you really have to read the ingredients, read the labels, and make sure that you're getting the utmost benefit from gluten-free, including a lower carb diet, because what you don't want to happen is if you give up your cherry pie, your blueberry pie, or your pecan pie, and you substitute it for something else, if that has just as many carbs in what you're substituting it for, you're going to get frustrated and give up. You may binge something else. You just want to look at labels and make sure that whatever you're eating is healthier. Because I struggled with this the first 30 days. I struggled with the weight gain. Now, a decade later, I've learned, read every label, make sure you're not substituting something else with way more carbs, and I've enjoyed the success of weight loss, more endurance, more stamina, and an easier, relaxed lifestyle. Now, because I've been doing this for so long, I can go to the grocery store and know exactly what I'm going to get every time. It takes a while, let me tell you. It does take a while. When you go into that grocery store, you're going to want to read the labels because there is hidden flour and wheat in many, many products. Gluten, wheat, and flour are in many daily products that we don't even think about. Now, I will differentiate this. I am not celiac. I have what they call an intolerance that's developed into an allergy. People with celiac, my understanding is they develop stomach issues that can be very severe and other health issues, and it's progressive, I believe. I could be mistaken because I'm not celiac. However, I didn't have those same issues. I had migraine headaches, I had asthma, and I had fatigue that was debilitating. That's why my doctor prescribed a gluten-free lifestyle. As far as I'm concerned, he saved my life. Now, there's also a myth out there that there's a lack of ready available meals or gluten-free eating is more expensive. Let me put those to rest right now. Back when I started this lifestyle, there may have been a lack of gluten-free options. That is probably the truth. Now, it's plentiful. There's always gluten-free options. When I started this lifestyle, restaurants didn't have these options. Whenever I walked into a restaurant and wanted something gluten-free, it was a massive ordeal. They looked at me like I was a pain in the neck. Forget it, lady. You're not getting anything like that. Leave, go somewhere else. Today, it's expected. People are walking in restaurants and getting gluten-free meals to go. So it's plentiful. It's at your grocery stores. You can get it for takeout. Is it more expensive? Because of the simpler recipes I make at home, I do not find it to be more expensive. It's a matter of, are you going to bake the chicken with crumbs or not? Are you going to bake the chicken with almond flour or gluten-free crumbs? Okay, let's take that as an example. Sure, breadcrumbs aren't as expensive as almond flour. They're certainly not as expensive as gluten-free breadcrumbs. They're probably half the price as the gluten-free breadcrumbs. But you're still going to buy that chicken. So you take the chicken, you saute it in oil. You need oil to do it the other way anyway. So you're really actually saving money if you just decrease the ingredients. That's one way of making it less expensive for your lifestyle. The other way is to start looking at it like, take your foods. If you want to have a potato, for example, potatoes are naturally gluten-free. You can have a sweet potato, you can have a potato, and you can add ingredients to the potato and make a whole entire meal out of it. Where before you might have had a piece of fried chicken and French fries. Now, take the baked potato, put some sour cream and gluten-free toppings, maybe some cheese. If you can't have dairy, you could always put a different type of ingredient in there. That eliminates the cost of the meat that you would have normally had otherwise with the meal. So there are ways of looking at this so that it's not economically burdensome. I wanted to share with you some personal examples. When I first became gluten-free a decade ago, it was not as known as it is today. So, like I said in the beginning, I didn't really have a support network. I didn't have people around me that knew what to do. I didn't have anybody to turn to. My mother thought I was crazy. What? No more fried chicken? No more chicken and dumplings? You know, that sort of thing. Other relatives, you'd go to a family function. What do you mean you're not going to have birthday cake? It's a birthday party. Like, I had no right to be there if I wasn't going to have the cake. Nobody is going to bring a gluten-free cake to a birthday party. So it's kind of an adjustment thing. In those first 30 days, you may experience people that are in disbelief that you went this route, because those people don't understand it. Those people don't have your allergies, your health issues. But you have to remember, you're doing this for you. You're doing this for your health. Let them be them and you be you. Don't consult with people who can't understand this. You're better off consulting people who have been through it or are going through it. The first restaurant I went to was a diner type restaurant. Now, mind you, a decade ago, restaurants didn't really have gluten-free options on the menu. I was pleasantly surprised to find out that they served an ice cream sundae and advertised this sundae as gluten-free. I was so excited. I looked at that waitress and I said, "You've made my day." I said, "I'm doing this gluten-free lifestyle. It says here in the menu, this is absolutely gluten-free. And I can't believe I actually found a restaurant that has a gluten-free sundae. I'm thrilled." I said, "Now, just to be clear, it doesn't have any like cookie crumbles or anything like that." Nope. It's vanilla ice cream, chocolate syrup, and a candied nut. Now, when I say that, I believe it was a pecan, like a candied pecan. And I made a point of saying, is there any wheat in the pecan? Like, do they roll it in wheat or anything like that? No. It's just a sugared nut. Well, that sounds fabulous, and I'll take it. In fact, I might take two. So she brings it out a little while later, and it's covered with cookie crumbles. To me, they look like Oreos. I wasn't 100% sure. And at that time, we didn't have gluten-free Oreos over a decade ago, I don't believe. Or we didn't have them around here anyway. So when I saw that, I was like, please God, tell me these are gluten-free Oreos. Wouldn't that be a thrill? So I said, wow, this looks amazing. I said, but can I ask you, what are these crumbles on top? She said, oh, they're Oreos. And she smiled. And I said, I'm so sorry, I can't eat this. And she looked at me like, what? What's wrong with you? Why can't you eat this? I said, I'm gluten-free, and cookies have gluten in them. Well, she didn't have any idea. She honestly thought she was doing me a favor. She thought she was just being generous and giving me an extra topping that I didn't ask for. And she had no idea that Oreos had gluten in them because she didn't know what gluten was. Some people didn't realize back then, maybe even still today. So if you can't have gluten, it means that you're allergic to, intolerant to wheat and flour. She made me a new sundae, and I told her not to worry about it, but I'm glad she had that experience. So now she knows, maybe educating somebody else along the way, maybe even educating other staff and the restaurant itself. The second situation, I went to a restaurant that had a beautiful shrimp dish. They covered this shrimp with this clear sauce over rice. I had gone to this restaurant even before I was gluten-free, so I was very acclimated to this dish. It was my favorite. I loved it. And when I became gluten-free, I was going back there for sure because I wanted to have more of that. So I go back there, but this time, of course, I had to make sure that the clear liquid over the shrimp and the rice was not flour-based or wheat-based. I said to the waitress, this is not my first time here. I love this restaurant, but now this time is different because I'm gluten-free. I've had this shrimp dish here before. Do you know if there's flour, if there's wheat, or any gluten in this dish at all? I really have to be careful. And the waitress looked at me and she goes, it's made with cornstarch, so it's gluten sensitive for people that have a gluten allergy. And I was really pleasantly surprised she even know those words. And I was like, wow, yes, that's fantastic. Thank you. I appreciate it so much. And she said, I'm going to make sure I tell the chef that you have a gluten allergy so he knows, and so he doesn't add anything to it like soy sauce. I'm like, thank you. I definitely appreciate that very much. Some people don't realize that soy sauce has gluten in it. Same with some teriyaki sauces. There is a version now of soy sauce, teriyaki sauce, that has no gluten, but at the time there was not. So I'm sitting there waiting with great anticipation for this dish to come out. I'm starving. She brings it over to my table and she sets it in front of me. It's brown. I looked at her and I said, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to be a pain, but this is brown. And we had talked about this and you said it was made with cornstarch. The only times I've ever had it, it was clear. So I'm not sure, did they do something different to it to make it gluten-free, or was it never gluten-free, or what? I don't understand what this is. She said, I stood there and watched the chef make it. He made it with cornstarch. And I said, okay, listen, I have to be careful. I have a severe consequence if I eat something with gluten in it. So I need to know, does this have soy sauce, or what is the brown stuff? She goes, you know what, I'm going to go talk to the chef. I'll be right back. So she goes in the office, comes back, and I'm watching her. I'm like, well, why did you go in the office and not talk to the chef? And she goes, oh, I did, and I talked to the manager as well. And I said, oh, okay. What'd they say? And she said, the dish is in fact made with cornstarch. There is no wheat, there is no gluten, there is no flour in this dish. It is 100% safe for you to eat. Otherwise, we wouldn't serve it to you. I said, okay, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. I didn't want to make bad waves with the waitress. I didn't want to come across as a pain in the neck, but you do have to advocate for yourself. So I took my spoon, because it was a very liquidy sauce, and I took a bite of this brown sauce over the rice. I didn't even put a piece of shrimp in my mouth at that point. I had a severe asthma reaction to that one bite. I couldn't breathe. My throat felt like it was going to close up. It was so severe that other customers in the restaurant came over to rescue me. One almost called an ambulance. One was standing there fanning my face as I was turning bright red and choking. It was a horrifying experience. Even I couldn't believe the reaction I had after not eating gluten for 30 days. Even I could not believe that reaction, that I would have such a severe reaction to gluten. Because prior to that, when I did eat gluten, I would have health issues, but I never had like an isolated asthma attack from it like that. The waitress came running over. She felt horrible. She had gotten the chef, and the chef confirmed he put soy sauce in it because he didn't realize that soy sauce had gluten in it. So when you go out to eat, it's imperative that you advocate for yourself. If something looks off, don't eat it. I'm just saying that for your own protection, your own safety. And to restaurants, heed this message. Train your waitstaff, train your chefs. We have to do better as a society. As more and more people develop gluten allergies, gluten intolerance, and have health side effects from eating this stuff. I have noticed that restaurants have done a great job implementing changes to their menus. There's pizza restaurants out there that will say, you know, you can have a gluten-free option of this pizza. Will that be more expensive? Probably. They do usually add a surcharge because it's probably more expensive to make separate gluten-free pizza crust than it is to just get one that they can make in hundreds at a time. Another example, I went to a restaurant. It was a very upscale restaurant, very expensive restaurant. And they had a menu for the day with pictures of the dishes they were serving that night. Everything on that menu had gluten in it except this one particular dish. Now, this dish was not advertised as gluten-free, but the picture showed a chicken and it was butterflied. So basically you would get the portion, like half a chicken with the breast, leg, that whole portion of chicken. It was roasted, it was seasoned, and it was plated with baby carrots. None of the picture showed any kind of sauce. It certainly didn't look like I'd have to worry about gluten with this dish. However, I don't expect a restaurant to cater to my needs. So that's why when the waitress came over to take my order, I made sure to tell her, hey, look, this chicken looks absolutely delicious, but I have to make sure it doesn't have gluten in it. Most restaurants are understanding and they will go out of their way to make sure something doesn't have wheat, flour, gluten in it for you. This particular waitress was like, oh yeah, no, I know for a fact this does not have any gluten in it. So I said, okay, I see that there's seasoning on the chicken. Do you know if they've used any type of flour in their seasoning mix? Because another time at a cookout at my office where I worked, a coworker used a pre-mixed season packet on some hamburgers and steaks that he was grilling for everybody in the office. And lo and behold, before I bit into anything, I asked to see the ingredients in that. And sure enough, there was flour in this packet of seasoning. So just lesson learned, you always have to read every ingredient. And if somebody else makes the food, double check, triple check, just to be on the safe side. So this waitress told me, nope, it's just seasoning, it's garlic powder, salt, black pepper. That's it, nothing else. Carrots might have butter in them. Can you eat butter? Yeah, I can eat butter. I just wanted to make sure there was no flour because I do have a problem with gluten and I don't want to get sick. She went, brought it out. I took one look at it. The entire plate was smothered in a brown gravy. The chicken was in the middle of it, and it was one of these plates that's kind of like a bowl. In the middle, it's dipped down, and then it's got like a higher rim, and it was oversized. The chicken was in the middle, like where it was lower in that section, like a bowl. The carrots were on the side, and I think there was a little potato, but the entire plate, the entire middle, especially where the chicken was smothered in this brown gravy sauce. It looked absolutely fabulous. I just didn't know if I could eat it. So I said to the waitress, I'm sorry, could you please explain what this brown liquid stuff is? It looks like a gravy to me. She goes, well, I don't know, I didn't make it. Okay, well, we had this conversation and you said it was just seasoned. It wasn't going to have anything, that I'm allergic to in it. So I said, I'm just being, an advocate for myself here. I don't expect you to know what I can and cannot have. That's why we had that conversation. And she said, I don't know. Let me go talk to the manager. So she went, got the manager. The manager looked at the plate and then looked at me and was truly unprofessional. She told me that it's gravy, and she didn't believe that I truly had a gluten problem. Now, I just want to remind everybody, this is going back over a decade. This wasn't last week. If that happened today, it would be on the front page news and everybody would be talking about it. It would be all over YouTube blowing up because it would enrage people. A decade ago, nobody got enraged over anything like this. People were just figuring it out. So the manager was so rude, and I tried to hold my composure. I didn't want to be like that. I didn't want to be rude to her. I was just trying to get her to understand how severe it would be if I ate that and what would happen to me. But what she said was she thought that I was just a pretender like everybody else in the world, just doing this gluten-free stuff. And I said, no, ma'am, that's not what's happening here. I have health issues because of gluten. I don't have gluten. I'm under doctor care. I can't have gluten. So she took it out from under me. She was very rude about it, abruptly yanked it off the table. Actually, she spilled my water in doing so. And then when she came back, she brought me half frozen chicken breast that they tried to defrost in the microwave real quick. And it didn't even have the carrots or anything with it. It was just that. And I said, okay, you know what? I'm not going to eat this. And I ended up leaving. And to this day, I will not step foot back in that restaurant. So restaurants, please heed that. You don't want to alienate your customers. Your customers come in there and they're upfront with you and they tell you, hey, you know, we have this allergy or that allergy. If it was a child and the mother said, hey, you know, don't put peanuts on this table because my son is allergic to peanuts, you wouldn't dream of doing that. So I don't understand why people think it's okay to stick a piece of crusty bread on top of a salad and bring it out to the table when somebody tells the waitress that they're gluten-free, because that's also happened to me on occasion. You can't just pick off the crusty bread. The little crumbs get in the salad and they make people sick. Therefore, if you're just starting out your gluten-free journey, please comment below. Have you had any of these situations happen to you? Nowadays, when people are more understanding, people are more knowledgeable, it's more common for people to have a gluten allergy. It's more common for people to be celiac than it was over a decade ago. Until next time, thank you.